Hey, we are Dr. Shane and Liz Watt, and welcome to the Be Healthy Naturally podcast.
We are doing this podcast because we are trying to bring knowledge and education to create a new way of thinking about our health.
Knowledge is the key to live a happy, healthy life, and our goal is to help you live your best life.
Thank you for being on this journey with us, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Howland Wellness is a Utah-based wellness clinic dedicated to helping patients optimize their health, energy, and longevity through a personalized root-cause approach. Led by board-certified plastic surgeon Dr. Nicholas Howland, the practice offers hormone optimization, medical weight loss, peptide therapy, advanced lab testing, and wellness coaching. By combining modern medicine with proactive wellness strategies, Howland Wellness empowers patients to feel their best from the inside out.
So we'd like to welcome you guys today. We have Dr. Nick as well as Laura, who works there at the clinic with them together. So we are happy to have you on the podcast with us today.
Thanks, guys. We're happy to be here.
So first of all, so you're a plastic surgeon. How did you go from plastic surgery to wanting to do things in a natural, functional way?
Well, I still do. Plastic surgery is still very much my day job.
Okay. Yeah.
I do a lot of operating still.
Okay.
And this was honestly the best dovetail into being able to treat patients in kind of from top to bottom. And not just from the outside looking in. And I would say about 6 years ago, as GLP-1 medications started to become quite popular and hormone replacement started to become popular, this just felt like the perfect way to also offer my patients everything else they were looking for and not just surgical options.
Because generally as a plastic surgeon, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you really don't do the day-to-day health stuff with them. I mean, they're coming in for a procedure, you do that procedure, and that's kind of it, right? I mean, you didn't really do a lot of one-on-one, like, kind of doctoring, or did you?
I would say yes and no. So my practice is a little bit unique in that about 80% of my practice is massive weight loss patients. So these are patients who've had a bariatric procedure or been on GLP-1 medications and have lost 50 plus pounds of weight. And so with those types
So you're
of
doing
patients,
the stuff to help.
you have a significant increase in the risk around those types of surgical patients. And so for those patients, you have to be taking care of their protein, taking care of their nutrition, making sure that they are going to heal the wounds that you're going to create. And so we were already doing quite a bit of medicine with those patients that this became very much a thing that was necessary.
Gotcha.
So we're going to open up kind of a big can of worms here of, the peptide industry. There's a lot that's going around about that. Now, why is it that, we can get it through doctors, we can get it through, shady places, all that kind of stuff, right? There's a whole gamut of peptides. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you know as peptides and why what your approach is and how you feel that this is the most beneficial for your patients?
Yeah, I'm going to let Laura tackle that one. I'm going to let her talk about why we feel like we do things the right way.
Yeah.
So okay.
With peptides, like you were saying, I mean, I could Google BPC 157 right now and just purchase it, add it to a shopping cart and check out. But with Dr. Howland, we always go through licensed compounding pharmacies, so we can always reach out to our pharmacies and ask for certifications of authenticity, for sterility checks, for potency, things like that. And if we have a patient say they have an allergic reaction, we can reach out and get all the details on what that medication was compounded with. When you purchase online, there's the wild, wild west, as Dr. Howland likes to call it. So there's really no oversight, and the testing with that is they can say there's a certain potency and they can't guarantee it, where some of the pharmacies we work with, we're even able to go tour the pharmacy and make sure that sterility standards are up there. So that's kind of...
Yeah, and we'll dive into peptides. I think that's a whole other separate issue, but before we even go there, part of the foundation of us starting this was over 6 years ago, as GLP-1s became very popular and people were seeking access to Ozempic and semaglutide and Mounjaro for weight loss. It became overnight almost what I call the Wild West out there, because every mom and pop shop on the corner that had access to a compounding pharmacy was writing prescriptions for these medications, and very few places were educating patients in how to take these drugs the right way. And so that was something that I very quickly became known for around the area, because the drugs work. Like, GLP-1 medications are excellent drugs. The studies that we have on them show that they work. The problems that we see with them are from patients not understanding how to take the medications. Meaning, if you're going to take these medications, you have to be getting enough protein. You have to be doing some sort of resistance training, like weightlifting. Otherwise, you're going to lose muscle, you're going to lose bone density, and you're going to have all of these problems of malnutrition that we see with GLP-1s taken the wrong way.
Well, and you can see that just when you're walking down the street or in a public place or a church or something. I mean, you can tell who's been doping up on that stuff, and you can tell the ones, it's like, okay, you've gone way too far, and they just look gaunt, right? They just don't look healthy anymore.
Yeah, so the early studies with GLP-1s that are interesting is, they showed weight loss across the board. And so we knew that you were losing weight. The first study, though, that they did looking at semaglutide, and they broke it down into components of what that weight loss looked like, was pretty striking. So let's say that you go out and you go on a diet, you do some exercise, and you lose 10 pounds. If you go break that down into the components, 75% of that weight loss is fat, and 25% is everything else. Muscle, bone density, all of the things. And that's actually normal, healthy weight loss.
A 75 to 25 ratio kind of thing?
75 to 25, more fat than everything else.
Okay.
When they looked at these patients who were on GLP-1 medications early, and they did a component analysis, that ratio was completely flipped. 25% of the loss was fat, and 75% was muscle and bone density. So early on, these patients that were losing weight, the number on the scale was going down, but they were actually getting fatter. They were losing more muscle, more bone density than they actually were fat. And that is what you can really start to see in those patients that look like they've overdone it, is they start to lose muscle in their face, they start to lose bone density, and we're already seeing long-term complications from people who have not taken GLP-1s correctly. And so that was really the foundation of our wellness program. Is we started with GLP-1s and then also with testosterone. We were like, we are going to prescribe this the right way. We're going to educate our patients on how to take these drugs correctly. With testosterone, we saw something very similar. The biggest provider of testosterone in the Valley was a $30 million a year operation, and their patients paid a yearly membership fee. They came in once a week and had a testosterone injection, and that was it. Everybody got the same dosage. Everybody got the same medication. Nobody's blood pressure was tracked. Nobody's hemoglobin hematocrit was tracked to see if their blood was thick or not. It was just this rotating door shop, and it was, in my opinion, extremely dangerous. And so that became the hallmark of really what Howland Wellness is like we pride ourselves on doing this the right way, which is not necessarily the convenient way.
You know, you had this whole practice of doing plastic surgery and stuff, but yet you saw the things that were happening that were not right. You know, a lot of people ask me, you know, about, you know, all of this Ozempic and, you know, the different types of, you know, the GLP-1, GLP-2, and also the 3 that's coming out here soon. And, you know, the thing that I tell them is that peptides aren't bad. Like, they are not bad. Like, they are actually good, but it's they're taking it wrong. It's the dosing, it's the overdosing, it's the things that are trying to get it off so quickly and not really paying attention to really what's going on to your body and the background that could actually be
Well, like you
harming
said,
it more.
they weren't doing, and originally they weren't doing anything to kind of keep up their muscle mass and stuff like that, and so there was major issues with it, right?
Yeah, and then with you as you start to get into peptides, like peptides, we don't really have um, a drug problem when it comes to peptides. These are what we have is a education problem and we have a sourcing problem. Um, Most places that are providing these, whether it's the Gym Bro on Instagram or the website from China, they are providing what's called research grade peptides. And those research grade peptides are made in a pharmacy that has much lower standards than a medical grade compounding pharmacy. And so, as part of Howland Wellness, one of the things we do, we will never ever prescribe a research grade peptide. And that is something else that we prize. We prescribe these medications, we do not sell these medications. So, we're prescribing to our patients and we're only giving them medical grade compounds. It's actually illegal for anybody to sell and give a research grade compound for human consumption. But it's fallen in this gray area of oversight. And so a lot of these companies they'll label it, oh, this is research only. We're not doing this for human consumption. And yet they've got dosing protocols on their websites. They've got instructional videos on how to inject this stuff. And it's very clear that it's intended for human consumption, but they're getting around the law by labeling it as research use only.
Right. So did you start? Let me step back just a little bit. As a plastic surgeon, were you doing a lot of plastic surgery because people had lost so much weight that you were doing like things to kind of the tummy tuck stuff, the different things to take off the excess skin? Is that kind of one of the things that you were doing? Because you said a lot of it was your weight loss patients, and then that's kind of what got you into.
Yeah, that's a very big part of my practice is body contouring after weight loss. So we're doing a lot of excess skin removal from breasts, from tummy, from body, and that area of surgery has only become more in demand with this rampant use of GLP-1s. And so for me, I will continue to do those operations. I'm grateful that people are losing weight and have loose skin and it's keeping me in business, but I also want to make sure that people are healthy and that people are doing it the right way so that they can heal from this and actually be in a better place by using these medications.
So what do you think would be, educate us a little bit more about why we would want to use these peptides and how it actually can benefit us. I mean, we've talked a lot about the dangers and stuff like that, but what are some of these underlining things that actually are it could, like people say, a miracle drug, right? Like, what is it that nothing's a miracle, but still, like, that's new and that is really going to benefit us because of what's going on in the background with these peptides?
Yeah, Laura?
Yeah. So peptides are really cool. So your body has peptides. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of peptides in your body. And so these aren't like a new thing. It's just that we're starting to be able to utilize them. And so as you age,
these are short chains. These are short chains of amino acids, anywhere from 3 to 50, and they act as signal or messenger molecules in your body. The most common peptide is insulin.
Yeah. So it's stuff that is already in your body, already going on, and then as you age, processes can start to decline. It can slow down. Different health issues can start to cause like malfunctions in those signalings. And so peptides are just a way to kind of increase your body's ability to already do what it knows how to do, but do it better. So, we talk about like BPC-157 is like a healing peptide. And so it actually helps your body restore and strengthen its own tendons and cartilage and reduces inflammation and things like that. So there's so many peptides that have, it's like endless what they address in the body. And so we we look at them for like, the inflammation and the healing, and then we have ones that work with like metabolic dysfunction, and then obviously there's ones that help with like cosmetic, with skin and muscle growth and things like that. So
I would say maybe talk about talk about your conversation that you have with patients when they come in and say, okay, here's my blood work, I'm interested in peptides. What does that conversation look like?
Yeah, so peptides, they can be for everybody, but not always, depending on what you kind of show up like for an appointment. So I always like say you have to have a place for the peptides to land. So if your body is in total metabolic dysfunction, you've got cholesterol through the roof, your fasting glucose is high, all of that, you can take the same peptide as somebody else who's very healthy, and the person who's healthy is going to have a way different outcome and notice the benefits right off the bat, whereas your body is working in overdrive to compensate for so many other processes that adding a peptide sometimes can actually overwhelm the body and make it harder. So the timing is really important, and looking at the labs and addressing like root cause issues before you go and throw a bunch of signaling molecules on someone. So if you look at someone like who has an autoimmune disorder and you throw a bunch of signaling molecules and peptides at them, you could actually throw them into an autoimmune flare because it's too much for their body. So lab work and consultation and picking the right peptides, and not just what the social media people say, is actually very individualized and kind of strategic.
Yeah, you have this idea that floats around out there on social media that everybody should be on this stack, right? Like, this is my golden stack of peptides that everybody should be on. And unfortunately, medicine and health is much more nuanced and individualized than that. And these are extremely powerful molecules. Like, insulin is the most commonly known peptide. Can you imagine what would happen to everybody's health if we just told everybody, yeah, everybody go take some insulin today. It's a magical peptide. You're going to love it. We would have people passing out of hypoglycemia and dead people left and right. And so,
I'll be honest, I've never even thought of insulin as a peptide.
Yeah, and that's the reason I bring that one up, because
I've never even thought of that being a
these
peptide.
Are powerful molecules, that kind of goes over the head. But when you're like, hey, insulin is the same thing, like, oh, that's a really strong drug. Yes, that's why we're very careful with these. And so, when people want to have these conversations with myself and Laura and Lacey around peptides, what to be on, we're very conservative. We don't want to, there's 10 things we could throw at you and say, here's a great stack, we know it's going to help. But A, if you give somebody way too much off the bat, they're not going to be compliant. B, in 3 months, you won't know what's working and what's not working. And so we make small adjustments, and we regularly follow up every few months and see what is working, what is not working. It's also a very individualized plan that we come up with each patient. It's not like everybody that comes to our door gets NAD and glutathione and BPC. No, it's what are your goals? What are you wanting to get out of a wellness program? And we individualize that care for every single patient.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, because, isn't there kind of an unwritten rule also, is that, like, you don't want to be on a whole bunch of peptides at the same time, right? And there's things about you cycle things on, you cycle things off, you kind of do some rotational stuff like that. And a lot of times if people aren't educating themselves on those things, or getting them in the proper place, then, that's like, oh, I've been taking this for 6 months straight. It's like, you were supposed to cycle that off every 3 weeks or something like that. And they're all different, right?
Yeah. But when you've got Joe from Florida sending it to you at $50 a bottle, he doesn't care. And so we really want to be a benchmark for education in and around this stuff.
So let's kind of break down some of these different peptides and what you've seen within your clinic that you feel has helped your patients the most, and it's not a one fix all, but has helped many of your patients be able to find relief in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think at least having some understanding and knowledge around them is very important, right? Whether it's a peptide for you or not for you. Let's talk about some of the more powerful ones that we utilize quite a bit.
So the one I mentioned earlier, BPC 157, is probably one that we use the most, and I feel like a lot of our patients are on it. It benefits a lot of people.
And most people have kind of heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, most people have heard of that one. It comes in combinations and things like that, but one of the things that's amazing about it is it reduces inflammation significantly, and it also, like I was saying, can strengthen those tendons and repair. And so a lot of people that live in like chronic pain and just think this is normal, this is aging, this is what happens as I get older, we can start to kind of restore some of that function and start having people feel a lot better and recovery from injuries quicker. And reducing inflammation with that is awesome. So we see that one a lot. And then again, with education on that, like that's also not for everybody. So there's theoretical risks with cancer growth with something like that. So you have to educate patients on, if you have any cancer risk in your family and what are the risks and the benefits of these kinds of medications. And then NAD is one that I think is amazing. It works at the like cellular level to help bring kind of energy to your cells. And so everybody could use some energy to their cells as they get older. And
so that's one that functions with the mitochondria?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that the mitochondrial one?
NAD by itself is not a peptide, technically,
not a peptide.
but it's a metabolite that functions with the mitochondria and helps in cellular repair. And that one, I think, is one of the when we start having these conversations around peptides, what can help me? NAD is one of the ones that I feel is the best bang for your buck, because it really does make a difference in energy and in recovery. So for athletes or for somebody who is aging and they're having a harder time recovering after a gym session, NAD can be phenomenal.
Okay.
I know we've talked about
What do you
GLP-1s
go through the other list? Yeah.
Yeah, so I know we've talked about GLP-1s a lot on here, and I think when they first came out, everybody knew them for weight loss, and now there's more and more studies coming out, and even what that can do for endometriosis, what it can do for PMDD, and they're seeing reduction in neuroinflammation. They're doing studies for Alzheimer's patients. They're even doing studies for like reduction in cancer risk. And so all of that goes along with a GLP-1, where on the media it's just weight loss. But it's doing so much more for the body by helping stabilize your metabolism and your glucose and your insulin, and then the inflammation reduction from it. So we're seeing, the results in the studies on GLP-1s that are going to come out in the next few years are going to be far past just weight loss. We're going to see a lot of benefits come from those. And then I'm trying to think, C-Link and C-Max are cool.
Yep, C-Link and C-Max are great.
Yeah, so these are nasal sprays that are called nootropics. So they work on the neurotransmitters in your brain to help the signaling that goes on in your brain. So for people with depression, anxiety, ADHD that are having issues with serotonin signaling or dopamine signaling, C-Link and C-Max can help the brain signal and fire better, and then receive those signals and utilize them better. So it's a natural approach to issues with anxiety, depression, ADHD, without having to jump to like a stimulant or something like that. So those ones are really awesome, and I feel like very rarely talked about.
Yeah.
Say those names again.
C-Link, SELANK, and C-Max, SEMAX.
So I'm just going to ask a simple question here. Where are they coming up with the names? Where did they come up with BP 157? Do we know what the origin of these names are, kind of thing?
Some of them, yes. So the C-Mac and C-Lanks are C-Lank and C-Max are interesting because they're actually derived in Russia and developed in Russia. When we have conversations with patients about peptides, it's important to understand which peptides actually have human data and which ones do not. So, for example, we don't have a lot of human controlled studies around BPC 157. There are a lot of clinical reports, like patients who've tried it and have improved, and case studies, but there's not a big double-blinded, randomized controlled trial showing that BPC 157 actually helps in human models. There's a lot of animal models with BPC that it's great. And it's important to know that as a patient, when you're signing up for a drug, you've got to know that this is an off-label use, and it's also not been studied significantly in humans. Cmax and C-Link are different in that there are several human studies that were done, verified, and redone in double randomized controlled trials. Those ones were developed in Russia, so I think that's where those names particularly come from. BPC is derived from the gut.
Yeah.
It's already present in the gut, and I think it's based on the chemical structure is where the number comes from. So.
Well, and they all have kind of different names, like MOTC, like, you know, that's a popular one too. It's like, okay, so I don't know, it's just kind of funny, like, where do they come up with these names for these things?
Mostly based on their chemical structure within the body.
Yeah, and there's shortened version to make it easy. Yeah.
You know, I will say I had gone to physical therapy for 6 months because I was having plantar fascia problems, and I started.
And I actually do a lot of that in my office.
And it just
I wasn't
like
helping her, so we were doing all kinds of different things.
And it just seemed like everything I was doing was making it worse. And as I was sitting there studying it more, I came to realize that I have Baxter nerve entrapment. I don't have, plantar fascia. And I went to a specialist, and I was like, I think I have Baxter nerve entrapment. And he's like, oh, that's very uncommon. And so he sent me in for an MRI, and he's like, oh, no, you have thickening, so it has to be plantar fascia. I'm like, no, I've had plantar fascia before, so that's probably why it's thickening. But I'm like, everything I'm doing is making it worse. I couldn't do anything, and I was in so much pain for probably about 18 months by this time. And so I just shot some BPC 157 into where my ankle is, and within 1 week it was gone. And so, these peptides are very powerful and can do some really good things. And here I had lived, for 18 months being in so much pain that just hurt so bad to walk every time I stepped down, and going to physical therapy and going, doing his stuff, and going and seeing the specialist, getting an MRI. I mean, this is a lot of money. And then just to be able to just inject some BPC 157 in that area, it took it away. And so these are something that I want to be able to explore them more, and to be able to, how can they help our lives, rather than being like, oh, they're bad, because a lot of people are saying like, these are bad, these are bad, these are bad. But if we could actually utilize them in the best way, I do think that we can, increase people's lives so much more, because there was not much that I could do when I was in so much pain.
Yeah, it's important to have. There's so many stories like yours out there of patients who have had experiences very similar to that and have had good relief from it. And the debate around this is interesting, because you have some physicians who have taken a hardline stance against peptides, saying they want them to go through an FDA clinical trial and they want them to get FDA approved before they will prescribe these medications. The problem with that is these are compounds that no drug company is going to spend the millions of dollars and the years that it takes to run them through an FDA approval, because it's not worth it to their ROI and their bottom line.
Well, they're not patentable, right? In order to make money,
Exactly.
they'd be patented. So in order for them to do that, they have to change something so it's patentable to them, so they can make money off of it.
Exactly. And so as a physician, I look at that. I use compounds and drugs that are off-label and not FDA approved all the time. We all do. Creatine is one of the most studied supplements on planet Earth, and it's never going to go through an FDA approval process for that same reason. It's not a patentable drug. But we use it all the time. Botox, in my field, is used off-label all of the time. It's FDA approved for right here and right here. That's it. Everywhere else we put Botox in the body is an off-label use, and patients sign a consent form saying they understand this is an off-label use, not FDA approved. And so I think I don't take that hardline stance. It's like it's got to be FDA approved. My stance, though, is it needs to be safe, it needs to be medical grade, and it needs to be done the right way. And so if we can continue to educate patients in and around that, then I think we can avoid some of the dangers we're seeing in patients taking compounds that are not safe. And that's something that we see more and more in our practice, is we see people getting exposed to research grade compounds and having allergic reactions or endotoxin reactions to these compounds that can be extremely dangerous.
Yeah, I can understand, because like you said, it has in a lot of ways become the wild, wild west. Like, I kind of look at it also as, I really don't think, I think pharmaceuticals are pushing back so much on it because I think it's hurting their bottom line as well. Which, to me, I'm grateful, because we do things naturally, right? But in the pharmaceutical model, they're starting to lose money now because people are doing more of these other peptides that they can't control, and so they're obviously going to push back, and they're the largest. They spend more money on advertising, more money on politics and things of that nature, trying to control it. So it is that fine line, right? It is definitely that fine line of the good, the bad, how well it can benefit, how much is social media stuff. And that's the thing is, like, I heard about peptides for the first time probably about 10, 12 years ago, but I didn't understand it. But back then it wasn't as socialized on the social media, right? Now it's like, holy cow, every time you scroll through social media, you're hearing something about it, right? Especially if you're kind of in that world.
Absolutely.
So where do you think we go from here with these peptides?
The right direction, hopefully. I think human trials are going to start happening more, and I think there's going to be more and more providers that are willing to prescribe it. And right now there's some legislation happening where they're moving some peptides to an okay to compound list. They're going to that's coming up, I think, in end of July. They're looking at that legislation.
Yeah, so I think this depends on whether you're talking about a national level or a state level. On a national level, we have big changes happening. RFK has pushed to move several of these peptides off of a do not compound list. And a lot of those will be reviewed come the end of July. And that will
Can you share what some of those are? By chance, can you share like
so
some of
BPC 157 is on that list. I think Laura's going to pull up the rest of that list so that I don't misquote any of it.
It'd be just interesting to be able to share with our listeners.
On a state level, you have several states that are meeting and making legislation right now in and around this. Alabama, I believe, was the first state. They just passed a law making it illegal for any of these research grade compounds to be distributed or sold. And then the list that's going to get reviewed in July will be AOD 9604. That's anti-obesity drug. That was kind of like a GLP-1 light. Some people still use that. Thymosin alpha 1, GHK copper, C-Max, and C-Link are both on that list. Melanotin 2 is on that list. I don't love the idea of that one. And Kisspeptin 10 is on that list. And then they have others that will hopefully get pulled later, including tesamorelin, CJC, and ipamorelin.
Well, and I know like the big one that people are kind of waiting for is the GLP-3, the retatrutide, but I know that they've been holding back a little bit with that one just because of racing hearts and elevated
Eli Lilly,
hearts.
which owns the patent on retatrutide, is pushing hard against people compounding different versions of retatrutide, claiming patent infringement. They just are releasing some of their phase 3 trial data on retatrutide. And so the phase 3 data that we're seeing on it is extremely promising, and it works very, very well at helping people lose weight, but also helping to maintain muscle mass and burn more fat preferentially over muscle. So it's helping combat some of those problems that we talked about earlier with GLP-1s. And
it does a lot with a fatty liver too, right?
What's that?
My understanding is it does a lot with the fatty liver and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, that one hits it's a triple agonist, so it hits GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon receptors. And so hitting those glucagon receptors can make a big, major difference. That helps stimulate more fat loss than muscle, and it does help in the liver significantly.
I think the most important thing from this whole conversation that we talked about, though, it was like when you said it all depends on where that peptide lands, because we cannot our health can't be outdone just because of the peptides. Like what we do within our bodies to keep it healthy is going to make a difference in how that peptide actually helps.
Well, like
and
what Dr. Nick was saying in the very beginning, it's like, you still have to, there's still nutritional components, there's still exercise components, there's still all these things. The problem is that, and I hate to say this, but like, we had someone that was at a football game with us, and they were chowing down on all this very unhealthy stuff. And he's like, "Oh, okay, it's okay because I'm taking this medication and it fixed it for me." And I'm just like, that doctor did not explain what that is very good for you. Exactly. He had like a cougar tail, and they had, like so much sweets and so much stuff, and it was just like, oh, I just pee it out anyway because my doctor gave me this medication, and I'm just like, okay, that's number one wrong. That's so unhealthy.
Right.
You can't just eat what you.
The number one indicator for your longevity in life, meaning how long you're going to live. You take everything else off the table. Your number one indicator for how long you live is your lean muscle mass. And if you think about it, that makes sense, right? If you hear people as they age, what usually happens? You start to lose bone density, you step off a curb, you break a hip, and then things start to go downhill very quickly. Because what happens as we get older is our skeletal muscle starts to atrophy, and we lose the strength to actually support our skeleton underneath. And that leads to bone density issues, and it leads to poor health overall. And so the most important conversation we have with our patients is how to maintain and improve muscle mass. And that is a conversation around nutrition, protein, exercise. Those are the most important things. Peptides are great. They are absolutely, what I tell you is they're magic. They're not magical. They are great tools to help you on your pathway to change and to health. They don't replace actually doing the work in order to change and be healthy.
Very well said. Very well said. No, that is so true. And yet that's kind of the misnomer, right? Is like what part of the problem, like with the GLP-1s in the very beginning, was that everyone's just taking them, and then they all, they had so much muscle mass, as you had eloquently explained, that they just looked horrible. And things like that because they weren't taught properly. And if you do, there's health, but there's always still things that we have to do. We have to be proactive. We have to be, we have to be involved in our health. We just can't take a pill that's going to save us, for sure.
Absolutely.
So, where can people find your clinic at if they want to find more about you and what you do?
We have a website called howlandwellness.com. There's a request consultation link on there. It goes over kind of our process, how to get started with us. It also goes over some of the peptides that we prescribe through our office, because a lot of people are curious if we have that before they even get started with us. So it goes over some of that kind of information, and then gives you a direct link to find us.
And you guys are in Draper, correct?
We are located in Draper. A lot of what we do can be done through telemedicine, and so we see people from all over the state. If you can't make it to Draper, that's usually okay. We can usually see you over the phone, establish care, get lab work close to you, and ship meds directly to you as well.
And I know you guys are going with us down to St. George Conference, because are you doing some stuff down in St. George too? Are you going down there? Do you go down there periodically as well?
Yeah, I'm down there every 6 weeks for my surgical practice, and I see patients every 6 weeks in St. George for surgery. And so, with my practice comes wellness as well. So we will be down there at the conference in St. George and talking about wellness with people.
Excellent.
All right. Well, what can you just say your website one more time?
Yep, it's howlandwellness.com.
Howland.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you
All
for
right.
thank you for being on.
Thanks,
And
yeah, thanks so much.
and you know,
Nicola.
because I think that this episode, so many people have so many different questions, and it's really nice to be able to talk to a doctor who is looking to the future of what medicine is and not being afraid to jump into that and be able to really educate us, because there's, like we said, it's the wild, wild west out there. And with you, I feel like people will have a direct path to their health. So thank you so much for coming on and explaining more to us and opening our eyes up to other options so that we can all become more healthier.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Your health journey is between you and your healthcare providers.
So remember, this podcast is for educational purposes only.
To stay up to date, visit us at BeHealthyUtah.com.
And please subscribe to our newsletter, where we give additional health information, health tips, as well as recipes.
Thank you to our 2026 sponsors.
We truly could not do this without them.